Amid global economic instability and trade fragmentation, Nigeria is positioning itself as a resilient and competitive investment destination. The 31st Nigerian Economic Summit highlights reforms designed to synchronize monetary and fiscal policies, curb inflation, and accelerate growth. Central to this agenda is the establishment of a transparent and consistent investment policy, including other policies, alongside robust dispute resolution mechanisms to build investor confidence. The summit also stresses the need for strategic international alliances to attract capital, expand trade, and secure Nigeria's role within shifting global supply chains, creating a pathway for sustainable development and long-term economic resilience. Dr. Shakirudeen Taiwo, a senior economist at NESG, joins me to shed more light on this. Dr. Taiwo, thank you so much for joining us on Business Edge.
Thank you for having me on your show.
So first, let's talk about the investment opportunities that Nigeria has. The Nigerian government has said that Nigeria is an investment destination for investors. How attractive is the economy and the industries? Let's start from there.
I think you have actually mentioned some of the key drivers of investment initially in some of your highlights and reports. It's very instructive that for a country to be attractive for investment, especially long-term investment, FDI, greenfield investment, the country must be able to lock in some of the macro fundamentals. And I think in the last 2 years, we could say Nigeria has been able to lock in some of these macro fundamentals to have been able to be a desired destination for core investment. Nigeria has been able, in the last couple of months, actually to stabilize price, which is the inflation. Inflation has been on decline in the recent time. But still being able to achieve the core a sort of driver of investment, which is our foreign exchange management. It has been stable. And I think in your last report, you could see an expert actually point to the fact that if Nigeria has been able to achieve FX stability, there is no need for the airline to keep charging in US dollars. So this is very key. And I've seen in recent time that the foreign exchange rate has been stable, has been transparent. There's been liquidity in the foreign exchange market. So issue of repatriation of profit for airlines is not an issue at the moment. We have seen issue of productivity, which we could translate as increase in the real GDP growth of Nigeria. Nigeria have relatively done a growth level that is above 3%. And this is actually above our current population growth rate. So we could see the FX stability. We could see a lot in terms of the macro gains that the country has been able to lock down at the level that makes the country to be attractable for investment, especially greenfield investment. And I think these are much more, and the government has been reiterating this over time, either on the fiscal side or on the monetary side, just to then ensure that as these macro indicators signals that the country is on the right track, policy pronouncements are also assuring of a stable, foreseeable future.
Okay, so having said that, let's scale it up a bit and look at what obtains in the global sphere. There are so many issues happening. There are trade disruptions, there are tariffs, there are disruptions in the supply chain. There's this Cold War between the global north and the south. You know, so many issues happening, and of course unilateralism when it comes to decisions being taken that favors a particular section compared to others. Now, in the midst of all these challenges, how can Nigeria position itself as a resilient and competitive investment destination?
So as a country, we need to understand that globally is always a game of competitiveness. How competitive is a geographical environment over the other with respect to some key productive activities, economic activities. So that's just the basic way the global order works in respect to economics. That's why in Nigeria, as a country, in order to build our resilience, it is clear that Nigeria needs to increase some of its export value addition so that it moves us drastically away from reliance on the natural export to more value-added export. And we could see some of this signal in the Q2 foreign trade report, where we have the manufactured exports, the non-oil export in this way, having an edge, a growth that is substantial. Also, the country needs to work, just like I've said, more on its policy direction, so that those key that communicates clearly where the country is going. Most global investors don't play for short time, aside from the foreign portfolio investment. But when there are clear assurance of higher growth, a stable environment, foreign investor comes for the long run. And we could see in 2023, where we could see net negative returns, global investment, having more inflows than even the investment with high end. So this means the investor play for the long run, because it is long run that is also sustainable for us. Nigeria needs to address some of the non-infrastructure constraints affecting trade. We need to address it. Aside from the infrastructure at the port, we need to also address some of the non-technical barriers that affect trade. So this makes the country to be a sort of destination that is attractive, irrespective of global shift. With global shift, which would always come in various forms, various dimensions. But if your macro is stable, your macroeconomic is stable, your policy environment is stable, you could see growth. At a minimum end, the net return on your investment is at the level that gives investment some sort of assurance. I think investors will stay, and the Nigeria will build a sort of a solid and resilient economy.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Taiwo. We are going to go on a very short break now. When we return, we'll look at those policies that you feel the Nigerian government can bring on board to create some sort of stability and can create some sort of attractiveness for these investors if we're definitely hoping to woo them to invest into the Nigerian economy. Let's go on a break. We'll be back in a bit. So we've been talking about how the Nigerian government can unlock investment opportunities and make its domain attractive to investors. And I've been talking to Dr. Shakirudeen Taiwo, of course, is the senior economist at Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And even as the 31st summit is coming up, or definitely will be coming up, I will be shedding more lights on this. And of course, we look at the policies now, most especially what policies or reforms the Nigerian government should be looking at if it hopes to make Nigeria, of course, an investment destination attraction for investors. So, Dr. Taiwo, tell us, when we talk about reforms and policies, what are those things that, most especially the NES 31st, that is the Nigerian Economic Summit, would be tinkering with to attract sustainable investments?
Thank you very much. As you could see that unlocking investment is actually one of the sub-pillars of this year's National Economic Summit, which is aimed at driving discussion around how Nigeria could unlock inclusive and prosperity for the Nigerian economy by 2030. So that's why I would say that the theme is reform imperative, building a prosperous and inclusive Nigeria by 2030. We will feel it's very important that we look at driving an industrial-led growth to ensure that our growth is driven by industries, industrial output, building infrastructure, advancing inclusion, strengthening institutions. So the last is unlocking investment, because we understand that this is sort of a stepwise. When we achieve growth, when infrastructure available are able to support productive activities, trade, investment, among others, where the output from these processes are inclusive, no one is left behind. And when institutions are built to actually support this process, we feel unlocking investment will be an outcome that comes. So as a result of that, the NESG feels the government should institutionalize. Though we understand there's this discussion at every level where the government should create a one-stop shop and a single window for all regulatory requirements with respect to investment. In one of recent interactions, it stated that it takes 2 hours to clear your goods at the port in Shanghai, while it takes, more than 24 hours to do that in Nigeria. So for investors, we prefer where regulatory easiness it's given to where they will have to pass through this process. So we feel the government should work on institutionalizing a one-stop shop for all regulatory, where there is a serviceable and enforceable agreement among regulators, government agencies that has anything to do with investment, such as the export promotion, such as the NIPS and the FIRS, or the custom, the Standard Organization of Nigeria. There is a serviceable, actionable agreement amongst to say, let's create this platform. Once an investor ensures these checklists are satisfied, is able to effectively move in his fund and start production as quick as possible. We also feel the government needs to operationalize a national after investment strategy that seeks to create a production and trade hub in Nigeria. We all know by aviation framework or geographical sketch, Lagos should be a regional hub for movement of cargo in West Africa and Africa as a whole due to our strategic location. So government should look at this. Our market should be enough to be either an entry port for other goods to move to other countries, even in terms of people and movement. We are also clear that the government needs to mobilize for infrastructure, and I understand the current government is doing a lot in this respect. Infrastructure that improves and strengthens Nigerian competitiveness, ensuring there are coastal road, trunks road that ensure goods are moved effectively from the port to the marketplace. According to World Bank report in the early year 2020, it said it takes more time for a cargo ship to move from China to Nigeria for your container to move from Lagos to Kano. This needs to be addressed. Okay. And there's a need for us to then establish a dedicated infrastructure vehicle and sector-focused guarantee windows for private sector to release their fund into this sector. And government should be ready to sort of provide some of catalytic funding for this. And we have seen...
Okay. I was going to ask, because a lot of this, aside from having policies and reforms in place, will definitely require funding. And you talked about infrastructural upgrade, you talked about scaling up production. That would involve a lot of liquid investment. So how will the Nigerian government synchronize monetary and fiscal policies to help Nigeria manage issues around inflation and equally drive growth? One of the things that you mentioned.
And what I can say with respect to this is that we need to actually appreciate the efforts of the current managers of the core economic institutions. I mean, the Ministry of Finance, and which is the coordinating minister for the economy, as well as the governor of the central bank, in terms of ensuring there is synchronization of their policy direction, policy communication as well. We will see in recent time that the CBN had actually restrained hiking interest rates before the last reduction of 0.5 percentage points. So this is clear. And we will see on the government end actually ensuring that what the fiscal side is doing is not actually triggering inflation, is not improving the inflationary pressure in the country to then make the CBN want to increase the rate. So there's this sort of synchronization of policy, and we could see in recent investment outing and shows, we could see the two institutions sit together and speak in one voice. And this is very, very important. For most investors, what they need more is an assurance, a predictable future, some set of policy consistency to actually release some of these funds that they have put into a old state. We could see this with a lot of new investments that have been unlocked in Nigeria. We could see this with a lot of public-private partnership projects that are successful. So what it means is that the government and the core economic institutions can work on ensuring synchronization of policy communications, synchronization of policy direction, ensuring that the action and policy communication synchronizing these improvements that would need it in investors' confidence for them to release their fund will readily be available. We've seen some countries that offer a negative net returns on investment, and we'll see a lot of funds also move to this direction. What this country has assured the investor, either domestic or foreign investor, that has actually released their fund into this economy is this that I've mentioned. One is synchronization of policy by the economic institutions. The CBN is saying same thing as what the fiscal side is saying. We have matching of policy actions and pronouncements. Of these are clear. And we then have government commitment to long term, which we think this government has also been doing. Majority of the policy are towards long-term goals. How do we achieve the mid to long-term goals while not neglecting the short-term gains that come as sort of trade-offs from some of this robust and favorable policy that sort of improve investors' confidence in releasing their money for more productive activities in the country.
All right. Okay. So now let's look at these other aspects. We understand that effective dispute resolution mechanisms is essential in boosting investor confidence. How can Nigeria achieve this locally?
I think the judiciary, and I think PEPEP has been doing a lot in this aspect, ensuring there are small claims courts where issues can quickly, in record time, can be addressed. And we all know contract dispute resolution, if it is effective in a country, investors are willing to quickly come around. And I think also the government is also creating some self-assurance in this way. They have ensured there is independence of judiciary. So even the case, if it involves the federal government, we've seen this being commercially resolved in a way and judgments are implementable. And I think if these are done, if serviceable contracts are implementable and Nigerian courts are able in record time to address some of these issues, investors will come around. This is what you have in some emerging economies like in United Arab Emirates, in Dubai, for example, where they have special investment agreements and court process to ensure that commercial disputes that involves foreign investors are in record time addressed, and their laws actually are structured to actually also ensure this. So if the government can follow through with the kind of activities they are doing, the small claim court, ensuring synchronization of commercial contracts and proceedings, I think Nigeria would achieve more in this respect.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Taiwo. Let's quickly go on another break. When we return, we'll still look at some strategic alliances that Nigeria can have with its global partners, most especially the ones that it has not been trading with. All right. We'll be back in a short while. So it's about unlocking investment opportunities in Nigeria, and Dr. Shakirudeen Taiwo, senior economist at Nigerian Economic Summit Group, of course, he's been sharing his profound knowledge with us on Business Edge for a couple of minutes now. And so, Dr. Taiwo, yes, let's now talk about how Nigeria can forge strategic global alliances, most especially with countries that it less trades with, all right, to strengthen trade and capital inflows?
First, I think it's very, very instructive that we need to understand that Nigeria has not been trading effectively with its neighbor. So I think the first opportunity is to actually operationalize after as a market-making alliances to ensure that we trade effectively with Benin Republic, where we have official trade flows between between both countries is very, very important and instructive. And I think with Dangote Refinery, there's an opportunity for Nigeria to actually unlock this. They will now have access to refined oil market that could actually serve the need of the West African belt. So let's start with that in the short term. Ensure that Dangote as a front of after window opening for the countries, we are able to optimize this opportunity. The second that would need to actually consider is for the Nigerian government to actually sit down and look at the major source of our manufactured imports into this country and sign an EPAs or trade framework agreements with them. And for this, and what we mean by the export processing agreement with some of these our major import markets where Nigeria source manufactured goods is to ensure that we locally produce some of these things. So we know we have a lot of these economic processing zones in the country, but we need to ensure some of these are sector specific to ensure that this actually reduces our needs to import. So we need to bring these companies or these countries closer. We also need to ensure we build a sort of bilateral infrastructure that ensure that we're able to build a logistic corridor. I think I've mentioned that. The strategic location of Lagos within the world map actually position it as sort of a regional logistic corridor or hub that Nigerian government can optimize this geographic or nature-given opportunities. So it is very, very important that we look at this. It's very clear that Nigeria actually needs a coastal road that connects us at a stretch with all countries on the West African belt. You move from Lagos and you get to Côte d'Ivoire maybe in the next 2 to 3 hours. This needs to be ensured. Then we need to have a sort of a blended finance or DFI guaranteed or targeted projects. So I think the government needs to look at some pocket of projects that would be packaged as sort of investment or product for the development finance institutions to be able to optimize this sort of opportunities. I think we have strategic relationship with some multinational financing organizations that Nigeria needs to optimize. We need to optimize the presence of IFC, though we know it's private sector development-driven organization, the presence of AFDB, World Bank, and these bilateral development finance institutions to ensure they're able to strategically finance some infrastructure that are the core of driving productivity in this country. Nigeria also needs to work, though we have mentioned it, on our trade diplomacy. I would do it. And I could say there is a lot of improvement in this side. For every investment roadshow, we need to have the private sector sit at the core of this. And I say we are having a lot this time. For Indonesia or some other countries that have achieved tremendous success in this, they're able to have in the room their private investment in some of these trade negotiations. So it then ensures that Nigeria at that level is robust in terms of its trade diplomacy. There are few gaps or loopholes that would be allowed in terms of ensuring that investment inflows into the country did not actually disrupt current private sector development, but come to rather to enhance this. And I think we would also need to also reduce our political risk. Nobody wants to.
Of course, that's one area that not only Nigeria has been struggling with, a lot of countries struggling with the sheer will to carry out its purpose when you talk about reforms and implementations. But then talking about, reforms, rollouts and policy implementations. Now, if we were to look at the critical sectors in Nigeria's economy, most especially for investors, which ones would you say can attract a maximum benefit if concentrations are optimal in terms of investment, funding, support, and every other program that might be unveiled for them?
It's very important that instead of putting it to a statement of probability, we put it into a statement of affirmative action to say the government needs to ensure that the reforms makes the manufacturing to be the bride for all investors. So it means it's key that our policy will then address the core structural challenges of the manufacturing sector. Also, it's also very important that as you grow industrially, you also need to grow the stomach of the people. So we need investment that ensure that our agricultural sector move from the current majorly sustainable level to more large-scale wholesale-based agricultural productivity. And I think if we're able to do that, a lot of our macro issues will be addressed. Because Nigeria is still a net import of some core agricultural produce like maize. Look at massively how maize disrupt our FX markets and adds to our food inflation. It's very huge. So the Nigerian government needs to look at some of this policy. And thirdly, Nigeria needs to address the core issue around trade facilitation. It is very important. Investment facilitation, trade facilitations are very, very key at the core of this. If you're able to do these three things, ensure our manufacturing sector is the bride of all. Ensure that our agricultural sector is able to not only feed our stomach, which I mean food security, is also able to put Nigeria as net export of some core agricultural produce is key. And lastly is that once we produce, once we're able to have a good harvest, we would need to actually trade this with other economies. So that point of connection with other global economy must also be efficient and also be effective in delivering some of the net benefit of having a robust manufacturing sector and a robust agri sector. I think government policy in this direction is what we need. Ensuring investment flows into these three core economic activities, I think it is what we need.
Okay.
After that, we then have massive job creation. We have a lot of shift in the socio-economic environment.
Yeah, so talking about job creation, the benefits and the perks that will come with such investments, you would recall that a couple of weeks back, some Nigerians complained about the government's developmental plans. And of course, its agenda that it's more profound and pronounced in some regions compared to others. That generated a lot of debate. So how can Nigeria, of course, the Nigerian government ensure that foreign investments that we are hoping to attract translate into inclusive growth?
That has to do more at the subnational level. And I think we need to mention this. Nigeria is a federating state. So there are some commercial activities that stays at the level of the subnationals, what I mean the state government. So you could compare the sort of infrastructure development, the sort of trade facilitation, policy, innovation from the state government like Lagos. So it means, and once these are in place, when Nigeria is a core destination for investment, the next point decision any foreign investor makes is, where will I site my investment, my industry? How conducive is this? So it means as the federal government at the national level is implementing some of this core policy, the subnationals must also consolidate these actions, positioning their state as the site for this investment. So it means we need to also ensure there are some sort of subnational infrastructure improvements, among other things. This will then ensure that investment opportunities and economic opportunities grow naturally, as we have with Lagos, than ensuring that governments push this kind of investment to our state. So it's very, very important, that's what I'm going to say about it.
Okay.
Investors are not donors, are not philanthropic. So they would always cite their businesses where they are able to predict the foreseeable future for their investment and their businesses. So the subnationals needs to actually also support the national government in ensuring everyone moves in the same direction and policy developmental efforts are also synchronized.
Okay. Of course, we know that for investors, it's all about return on investment. So, I mean, you can't take it away from the fact that they put their money into a system and they need to get some sort of rewards, either profits, revenue generation, and whatever it is. So we understand that. So even as we wrap up on this, Dr. Taiwo, now let's look at the Nigerian Economic Summit, the 31st edition. What are the long-term implications of such discussions in such summits for Nigeria's economic resilience?
So we must first appreciate the platform, which is the Nigerian Economic Summit, and this is the 31st edition. The summit has been very, very instructive in bringing the core stakeholders that holds the future of the country to sit in the same room and have some serious heart-to-heart discussion on what's next for the country. So this summit as well is actually positioning a short-term focus for the government, the private sector, the development partners, the civil society organization, and most importantly now, the youth, to actually be in the room to have discussion on how we could improve the sort of current gains that we have with these reforms ongoing. We could also effectively address some of the adverse trade-offs that are planned from these reforms. And it is as a result of this that I am encouraging the government officials or private sector stakeholders, key industry players, the civil society organization to come to Abuja, to come and spend this time with us as we chart a foreseeable future for the country, one that is not only growing, but the growth actually translates into a better, prosperous, and winning future for the youth. And it's also very important that this year we are also specific about what future holds for the country. By 2030, it is not about a tenure of a government or anything. It is about at a strategic point in time, there is need for a key milestones, and we feel by 2030, Nigeria must not be a globally leading or competitive economy alone.
Okay.
It must also be one that is independent, privately sector driven, and the benefit of all this translates into a richer, better, and a prosperous Nigeria for everybody, including somebody that is in as far as Zamfara, or somebody that has the opportunity of the booming economic activities of Lagos.
Well, of course, you just reminded me of Vision 2020. I don't know if we're able to achieve all the templates and all the highlights for that particular vision. But then, of course, we have another opportunity with the 2030 template. And if we can improve and consolidate on our modest achievements, definitely Nigeria can be at par with its peers within the global sphere. Thank you so much, Dr. Shakirudeen Taiwo, Senior Economist at NESG, for sharing your time and resourcefulness with us on the show.